Once I started on the Wim Hof, the breathing and the cold water, I was very drawn to the mountains. So I moved from the coast and I started to get into the Threadbow River every morning. It doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter if you're Asian or you're European or you're Mexican, right? Or, you're black or you're white, or you have this belief and someone's got that belief. We all connect because we're all one. And I truly believe if everyone gave it a go, there would just be peace on earth.
Listen, Stokely, where we tried to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told.
Stokely is a creative endeavour to listen, learn and evolve through the art of conversation. And here's your host, Noelle.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Stokely. Are you ready? It's time to learn a little bit more about the cold. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Leah Scott, one of Australia's only Wim Hof Method Instructors and one of the leaders in this space. Today we get to speak to Leah about so many things that has to do with her connection to breathwork, extreme cold exposure and nature therapy. We really get to listen to Leah's story and how she came to do the work she is now doing and how it has an effect on so many people's lives in and around the retreats that she holds. Leah held the first women's only Wim Hof Method retreat in the world, and we get to talk a little bit about that secret women's business, but not too much. It was a really, really big pleasure to speak with Leah and learn so much more about the work that she does and the positive impact it has on the world. So, if you don't know too much about the Wim Hof Method, but you do want to learn a little bit more, this is the podcast for you. And I'm really, really happy that I was able to introduce Leah to this audience. So, take some time, get a pen and paper, write some things down, and I really look forward to hearing about how you go with getting into that cold water. Thank you for tuning in. And before we get into the podcast, I'd like to take a moment to thank the traditional custodians upon the lands which we gather to listen and create this podcast. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to recognise their everlasting connection to land, waters, and culture. So, thanks for tuning in. And I look forward to hearing about what you think about the Wim Hof Method. As I mentioned just before we started recording, the many laughs that we've already had, I'm so grateful that you've been able to give us some of your time today and we've been able to actually make our schedules align because over the winter you've had a pretty busy winter with running a number of retreats and things like that in the area of expertise that you are currently practicing in. And yeah, so I just want to start off by saying a huge thank you for your time. And I can't wait to, just share what you do with a few more people in the world.
Thank you, Mael. And I'm so grateful to be here. Hey, thanks for having me and helping me get all this out that little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just dive straight into it. And of course, I mean, I'm more than happy to help spread the good word of what you do and what people like yourself do. So Leah, you've been on a bit of a journey, hey, over the last few years. That I think that's safe to say, and I think it would be so good as by way of an introduction, just to maybe explain what you currently do in the space that you're practicing, and then we can maybe backtrack a little bit and listen to the story of how you got there.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So, I am a certified Wim Hof instructor, and I pass on workshops and retreats, predominantly over the country. But the last year, I've been blessed with passing it on around the world as well. So this winter, I've been extremely busy up here in the snowy mountains. I'm based in Jindabyne and Threadbow. And it's been, since COVID, I've had to be based here and whatnot. And I've really enjoyed passing on my way of life to many of the Australians that have come in for my retreats.
So let's break that word retreat down, because I've been lucky enough to attend a number of the retreats you have hosted, and also the retreats that some of our friends have hosted. I think we did the first Wim Hof retreat that was basically in Australia back a couple of years ago now with Zane, another mate of ours, which was incredible.
Yeah, it was the first for Australia.
Yeah, and
First Wim Hof.
And it was just it was everything that you could imagine it to be. I totally loved it, and the people were just unreal. So anyway, like without us just kind of living that beautiful memory, what is a retreat? How long does it go for? And what is everyone experiencing when between the Friday and the Sunday? Like, what's the schedule that you basically work on for a retreat?
So we get into a lot of breathwork and meditation, and also cold exposure. So I get people into icy rivers up here in the snowy mountains. That's really the tools that we use, and incredible transformations, happen over the weekend. A lot of people, they come in really not knowing what to expect, and it's a beautiful process of delving deeper into different types of breathing and whatnot, releasing emotion and trauma. And as the weekend progresses, people experience, pure ecstasy, and we delve deep into the way our mind, or the way their mind and body works, and being able to step away from, emotions and thoughts and these perceived beliefs that we have. And it's very transformational process, but also educational, right? Because the Wim Hof method is science-based. So I like to provide these tools using the language of science, but also bring in my spiritual side of spending time in nature.
When you say icy rivers, you're actually going in there and breaking through the crust of ice with your axe, and then you're getting people just to go in and just sit in that cold vat of water with ice floating around them. And I think that's just it's such an incredible visual, and it just goes against so much of what we are told to do, like get into the freezing cold water. It's like everything we ever hear about it is avoid it, which is good for a number of reasons. But if you do it, like you said, in a safe environment that you create on your retreat, it's a perfectly good thing to explore and experience as a human, right?
Yeah, and it's the value of the method itself. We know that a couple of minutes in ice water is safe. It's a teacher in itself. I mean, yes, the ice water, it's the catalyst, right, for providing, freedom within the mind and body. Like you said, it's scary, right? We're taught to fear it from birth, and scary equals bad, which means a lot of people don't want to do it. But when they follow their curiosity, right, and their intuition, and turn up and spend the weekend, they see the incredible benefits of doing what they fear.
Yeah.
It really breaks apart their beliefs, and they realize that, these thoughts and emotions that they have of doing something difficult perhaps is not always correct. And that in itself is very life-changing for people, right? Because I mean, stress and the emotions and thoughts and feelings we have before going in, when we can step away and observe this happening, it really, it brings so much awareness for our mind and body, because it's a very generic process, doing anything difficult. And we just use the ice water as, like I said, the catalyst, but it transfers into everything we do in life. So, yeah.
The people that you've welcomed onto your retreats throughout the winter and also the years previous to this one, can you just, run us through an example or two of what it is people really do go through? It's through a weekend, I know you mentioned there's these moments of fear and then ecstasy and et cetera,
Yeah.
but can you just give us an example of what you've seen that's really kind of been a really rich experience for you as a person who guides these things?
Yeah. Well, it's deep inner work, right? And, we doing this type of work, it's not always, it's not easy, for many of the participants, it can be quite painful. It can be exhausting. It really breaks open their perceptions, right? These perceived perceptions of life. And I think a lot of the time they're very blown away. Occasionally I'll have, every retreat I seem to have someone that come in and they've either their friends paid for them or their mum's paid for them, and they're, I thought I was here for a Bali meditation retreat or a yoga retreat, and it's not. It's this process of breath work releases these deep trauma and emotions that we get stuck within the body, and they notice, and we talk about resistance to these negative labelled emotions that they experience during the breathing and the cold water. And they realise after a couple of days of processing this, that if they let go of this resistance and control to feeling this way, then they experience pure ecstasy. Yeah. So for me, it's there is so much involved in it. I mean, we can look at these many different benefits of releasing, like I said, the pain and the emotions and the beliefs, but getting to know the body, how to calm it down, right, in difficult situations, creating stillness within the mind. And yeah, I mean, it helps us. It helps us sleep, right? And it's great for our immune system. So there is many different benefits, and we do a lot of talking as well over the retreat and discussions, right? But it's also bonding. Everybody that comes is just they're blown away by how like-minded we all are, and the absolute loving and non-judgmental environment that is created, and that's what I love to pass on, that it's safe and, yeah, without judgment. So we try and build community in the end, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's one of the most, one of the richest feelings that I come away from a retreat with is that understanding that you're not the only one who has this strange intuition or feeling to want to get into cold water, and not necessarily just the cold water, but like this, just this desire to go and just break down those stories that we've been told about this is right, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good. And I think like you said, it's just once you get a whole group of people thinking in that way, that, oh, I'm not the only one. And this is a place where there are people that are like-minded. It can just manifest into this huge ball of energy that everyone is just stoked on. And people just, yeah, like you say, almost get those small moments of ecstasy as individuals, and then it becomes this collective like energy and buzz within an environment. So take us through a little bit of a what you mean by breath work. Like what does a breath work session look like, and just give us a little bit of an insight to how a session would work and where they fall in between the weekend.
Yeah, so it's predominantly, it is Wim Hof breath work, and it's this process of deep breathing. Okay, so it's a controlled hyperventilation, and you're looking at, I mean, I'm guiding them, but it's approximately around 40 breaths of this deep breathing down into the belly, and simply just letting go. And then they stop and they hold their breath for as long as they can. They feel the urge to breathe and they take this full breath in and they hold and they gently squeeze up. So this is one round, and we'll do multiple rounds in a breathwork session. But as the rounds progress, they start to be able to hold their breath for a lot longer, and they drop into this deep meditative state. And you know, there's all types of chemicals that we're releasing. We know that we release adrenaline. We know that we're influencing our immune system thanks to science, right? We're reducing the force of inflammation and releasing, creating leukocytosis, so releasing more white blood cells. And getting to know the nervous system. So the deep breathing phase it's very fight-flight, so it's the sympathetic nervous system. Then they're holding their breath and they're calming down into parasympathetic. So it's making them conscious of how their body works, right, in the sympathetic, and giving them that tool to know how to calm down into parasympathetic. To really explain deeply, it's so difficult because it's incredibly euphoric. And like I said, over the process of the weekend, they delve deeper, and it can be painful at times and upsetting, and they can have these negative labelled emotions, but then it starts to transform into pure ecstasy and happiness. And when you sit through it and you experience it, you come out, and I mean, we see colours and lights and have deep spiritual experiences, which is something that's very difficult to explain.
Yeah, absolutely. One of those things that really just needs to be experienced in a way.
Yes.
I do remember that at some of the retreats we've done, that people turn up and they say, oh, this is great. I've been doing this. I've been doing breath work. I've been doing the Wim Hof method for, the last few months. I'm a pro. I know what's going on. And then once they lay down and they, you get into a session, there's some really small nuances with the way they're doing this breath work that you're like, oh, maybe change up the technique a little bit and do it this way as opposed to that way. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what the very correct method of breathing in is? Because I feel like this is like a critical point about breath work that quite often gets a little bit, misinterpreted or, just like taken the wrong way.
Yeah, well, they, as I did when I started, we teach ourselves off the internet, which is not always correct. It's the mechanics of breathing is incredibly important, especially with deep breathing, because we're really, we're using it's diaphragmatic breathing. So we're massaging all our internal organs and creating blood flow. So you want to be able to get it right. And what I tell people is pretend that you're blowing up a balloon, and we're stacking the oxygen all the way up our core. So it's like we're filling up a canister of water from the bottom, aiming for our pelvic floor and filling all the way up. Something else that is, there is, a huge misconception that the Wim Hof breathing must be super fast, like, and it's not just like that. I try and pass on that, how to ask yourself, how is your internal state? How are you feeling right now? How did you get here? Because that will guide you on how you should be taking your breathing session for the day, for the morning. And, what do you have on for the day? Where do you want to be? Where do you want your internal state at? So that's also super important, right? Make your breathing session your own, your breath work.
Yeah, absolutely. And reminds me of what someone has once told me about meditation, and that is like it's not just about what you do in that 10, 20 or 30 minutes or an hour when you're sitting in meditation, but it's how you take that throughout the other 23 hours of the day, and how do you set the tone to what you want to live to throughout the rest of the time you're awake in that moment.
Exactly. And I always tell people, having a breathing practice in the morning when you wake up is the best start to the day, because it'll make you conscious of how you're breathing through the day, to keep checking in and asking yourself. And it's a gateway to all types of breathing and meditation. There is no right and wrong, good and bad breathing, breathwork practices. They all have their own benefits.
So, and with the cold exposure, especially on the weekend retreats, how often are people getting into these icy cold rivers?
Should I be honest here?
I actually don't know. I'd like to. Yeah, it's kind of like this awesome mystery because you really actually don't know.
And it's a process. Again, right? I always ask them, I'm like, trust my process, trust yourself, but trust my process as well. So it's a couple of times a day, depending on how long the retreat is, right? But it's just a few minutes at a time, 2 minutes, say, but I build them up because they need to be training and adapting themselves for the hike. If they're coming for a winter retreat in the middle of winter, they're going to be walking through snow in their shorts. Then I want to see that they're ready for that. They have to be ready. So it's the training process is extremely important. But then at the same time, I tell them to, listen to their mind and body. If they've had enough, there's free time over the retreat. Sometimes they'll go and have a little sleep, or they'll just sit there and listen. It's not compulsory to join in every single time.
Yeah. So in saying that, because you just you've mentioned the hike, which is kind of like the finale of the weekend. So backtracking a bit, what does the schedule of the weekend look like? Like, what are you doing? And then you could maybe like finish with a bit of an explanation about the hike and the importance of that.
Yeah, sure. So it's breathing and an ice swim on the Friday afternoon. So let's say it's a 2-night retreat. That's predominantly what I've had this year. Okay, there'll be longer retreats next year, but it's more been a weekend type experience for people. And we will tell stories at night, and then on the Saturday it's a couple of swims, a mini hike, science talk as well behind the Wim Hof method. Science behind, what are our systems, our nervous system, our cardiovascular, respiratory, our immune system, and how is the breath and ice water being affected by these systems. and what chemicals are we releasing out of our endocrine. And we have a nighttime meditation, and then we've got the hike, big breathwork session on Sunday, and the hike in the morning of Sunday.
And this hike, for people who aren't aware, take us through what's so different about this hike from a normal family hike that you might be going to on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes, sure. So it's they have the option of walking in their shorts. So literally shorts, and for the ladies, right, a swimmer top or a gym top. So it's, full exposure to the cold. And in winter, the snowy mountains Thredbo is covered in snow. They can have a beanie and gloves on as well if they like. It's their choice. And we breathe and we walk. But it's weather dependent. I had the first women's retreat for the world, and that was 2 months ago, and it was snowing. It was just phenomenal at the same time. And there's 20 women walking through the snow in their shorts, laughing. It's a beautiful experience because we're so bonded by that. It's funny. I know it's just 2 days, or this 3 days, but it feels like, and the participants will always say that, it feels like we've spent a week together.
It's so amazing how if the work is intense, then you kind of fast track this process of just being unapologetically yourself, which then just allows you to connect so much quicker. You drop all those walls and all those all those stories and guards that you've got, and you're just like, I'm just going to connect with this person on a real level. And like you said, it's
so beautiful, and it's such value to this way of life. It doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter if you're Asian or you're European or you're Mexican, right? Or you're black or you're white, or you have this belief and someone's got that belief. We all connect because we're all one. And I truly believe if everyone gave it a go, there would just be peace on earth. We get back to our nature, how we were born: love, kindness, freedom, confidence. It's basic stuff, right?
It really is, and we've gone about making it quite complex, and we've done that pretty successfully.
Yes,
it is really, really interesting how the breath is the one thing that we definitely cannot live without, and once we cease to be breathing, we're no longer living on this earth. And it's just so interesting how the most vital thing at the end of the day is leads to some of the most powerful experiences if you apply some of the tools and techniques that you've spoken about. So you just mentioned, Leah, that you hosted the first entirely female Wim Hof retreat in the world. So the first one that's ever happened. Why did you feel inclined to do that?
There's many reasons there. Bringing women together, for a start, we can heal the world. The feminine power and energy it's just beautiful. But I think sometimes we lose that knowingness about us, and delving deep into this way of life for quite a few years now, I realised that it is such a great way to connect within, for the mind and body again, and get in touch with that power. I see the masculine, they struggle just as much as the feminine as well. And that's why I will always do mixed retreats and whatnot. But these women retreats are really starting to hold a very special place in my heart. And I do them as much as possible, as much as the interest is there. And it really is.
What is different about like what's the different feeling that you have in a space that is entirely female on a retreat?
I think we become so free and confident. The women, we speak our mind. We have incredible conversations, and like everything is, there's no off base type conversation, it's all out there. And we delve deep into the feminine body and the connection, right? It's just the beautiful connection, and the love that we have is it's fun, it's beautiful. So,
yeah, I mean, I do feel like in some ways it's not really my place to ask, because when you do look back to ancient wisdom and the way First Nations people from all different parts of the world interacted in those set gender groups, whether it be women's business or men's business, it was a very secretive thing. It was just like, no, this is not for you to know. We're just going away into the wilderness, and we're going to do our women's business, and we're going to do our men's business, and what happens out there stays out there. So it's just like so I do apologize for asking, but I just
that's right. I can give a little away, Mael, but not too much.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I'll just have to figure out how to reincarnate as a fly and just be a fly in a wall in one of these retreats.
I've heard that many times from men, yes.
Well, as I said, I don't really need to know, and no other men really needs to know. But you do feel like there really is a different situation that comes about when you have these gender-only retreats. With the Wim Hof method, Wim Hof himself has become a bit of a celebrity in a way, and it's pretty amazing to have looked into his work personally myself about it would have been maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I think, and just seeing the rise in interest and the rise in popularity with him as a person, and also the work that he does. Like, you've spent some time with him, him. When did you first hear about the work, and what was your curiosity that sparked when you first heard about it? And then we can maybe go into speaking a little bit about the work that you've done with him specifically.
Yeah. Well, it started around 5 years ago for me. So I separated from my husband, and I had extreme anxiety, depression, stress, panic attacks. I wasn't sleeping, and my mind was just racing. And at the time, I was the fittest person, but mentally I was drowning. So I started, this led me onto a seeking journey back then, so to speak, to find peace, right? Just peace within, pleasantness. And I tried many different modalities, but I admitted to a friend of my, where I was at, and he said that he'd listened to this podcast with Joe Rogan and the Iceman, and had I heard of him. I listened to his podcast, and he talked a lot about, that we shouldn't be suffering at the level that we are as a society, and that we can all be happy, strong and healthy. and he talked a lot about the science behind the method, and that really drew me in at the time. And breath work itself and cold exposure was completely out of my realm back then, but I had nothing to lose. You know, when you're at rock bottom, you'll give anything a go. So I did the breath work, and within 20 minutes I'd seen lights and colours, and it was serenity, you know, very euphoric, and it blew my mind. You know, I come out and I had this deep sense that I'd found something that would just change my life forever. Like, I knew at that point. I wasn't even going to have the cold shower, but after that experience, I thought I had to give it a go, and it was very vocal. I won't go into it. But when I come out, I felt strong and present, and my fogginess was gone. And so I had peace, I had strength, I was in the moment. And so that was it. I did it every day. You know, fast forwarding then to the work that you said, you know, that I've done with him. Was incredibly lucky to spend time with him in Thailand last year in December. And we took 60 people from around the world through the method. And, you know, I've met Wim many times, and he's genuine, absolutely genuine. He's beautiful, and everything that you see online, that's him. You know, he's charismatic, he's childlike, and I love that. He is who he is.
I mean, that in itself, your story, is one that I feel like, well, it's so, you know, as a personal story, it's just so powerful because, like you said, you've really changed your own life just through giving something a go that you know, that only just felt like it could be somewhat of a solution. What else has come about through this whole journey that you've been on that maybe initially you thought like, this is really a negative, but it's turned out to be an incredible positive thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, we feel amazing, and you have the experience when you do the breathing and the cold exposure straight away. Okay, so at a workshop, people will feel great. But if you can commit and practice for months and months and months and years, you know, the true benefits of this way of life start to reflect a lot. You know, it's complete change of perception and everything in life. And there's no stone goes unturned. For me, you know, through my journey early on, when I first separated from my husband, I had many sort of awakening type experiences where I feel I saw the world for what it truly was at times. And it was a very difficult time for me this year, but the best thing that ever happened to me. So once I started on the Wim Hof, the breathing and the cold water, I was very drawn to the mountains up here. So I moved from the coast, Browley, where I grew up, and I started to get into the Thredbo River every morning. Back then, it was a very solo journey. You know, whenever I would tell people what I was doing, it was, you're crazy, you know, you're fucking so I kept it to myself for a year, and I just worked on myself. And driving down to the river when it was either snowing, half frozen over, you know, the outside temperatures -5, -7, I would have to be with myself. You know, it was me and the river. It was me and my thoughts. It was me and my emotions and my pain. And the daily experience, I started to step away from my thoughts. I thought, you know, my thoughts would be, why are you doing this? Maybe you are crazy. You should have just stayed in bed under the doona. but then I'd step away and I'd focus on my breath or my body. And then I'd have my emotions, and I didn't like my emotions, so I would create distance or space from them. Or the pain in the river can be, it's very painful. And so I felt like at one point I had this complete separation from my mind, my body, my physical body. And it was this deep sense of knowing that I am, a being, I am not this. And that incredible awareness that I had back then, I use in, it completely changed my life in every aspect. So that was a major occurrence, or, awakening, whatever you'd like to call it back then. So I always like to, pass on my retreats and this way of life, coming from that background and that point of view. And, I knew that if I could get through a few minutes in the river every morning and overcome myself, and what I know now, I was rebalancing my emotions as well, chemically, and I could face any challenge. I was going through a divorce. I'm a single mum. I had my 2 boys, and, finding jobs, coming and going, and things that used to be incredibly stressful that may have caused me to go to bed and sleep because of depression didn't worry me anymore. I was like, it didn't matter. And I thought that I was just surviving each day back then. Right. But the long-term benefits of that, here I am. I just love life, and I love that I get to pass this on to people because it changed, like I said, every aspect of mine. Yeah.
So grateful for you to be able to share that with us. Leah, what a journey. In some ways, to thinking about what you've just said, it just makes me think, wow, like imagine what's going to be like in 4 more years' time,
That's I'm every 6 months. I just can't, and even when I still get adversity, like challenges, things I don't like. But as the years go on, I'm just so accepting, it's caused this acceptance, and I don't have fear towards what might happen, in the future, because I work on my inner presence every day, and I try and be here now all the time. I'm not lost in the monkey mind, the delusional, compulsory, autonomous thoughts and actions that I used to be, and that I see so many people in. And it's from having this, simple, basic, not easy. It's not easy practice, but that's why the benefits are so great.
I think that's one thing that I've definitely seen be reiterated a number of times is the consistency and the commitment that needs to be had with the breath work and the cold exposure too. It's so interesting the emotions that run through our body and our mind when we're standing on the outside of a cold shower, or we're standing on the side of a cold river or a cold lake.
That's right.
You've taken so many people across that threshold of like complete, be it fear, anxiety, just nervous, like all of that. And you've taken so many people over that threshold, which I feel like is just such a incredible position to be in. What do you say to someone when they are just full of fear on the side of a cold river, and you take them by the hand and you walk them into that water? What do you say to them?
So, firstly, the people that come to my workshops they're young and old. You know, they are they're teachers, they're mental health practitioners. As I've had scientists, I've had mums, you know, I've had, you know, builders, athletes, people wanting to improve their mind and body. And the one common thought is they don't want to go into the cold water. It's fear of the cold. You know, it's just, like I said, it's ingrained in us. But in that is just incredible benefits of getting to know our mind and our body. We know, thanks to science and thanks to Wim taking this way of life through science, is that we're releasing dopamine, right, on the riverbank of not wanting to go in. You know, we get friction, we get effort, we get strain. We get to observe our thoughts, observe those thoughts. Then we conquer our fear. You know, we go in, we get noradrenaline, the greatest chemical released, which is in most pharmaceuticals. It's a natural antidepressant. It's responsible for attention and focus and reducing blood pressure, right? Then when we get out, we get the reward. You know, we've conquered our fear. It's self-worth. You know, it's a proud moment. And then in comes the awareness of perhaps my thoughts aren't always correct, right? And so I try and show people to separate yourself from what you identify as true. Maybe that's not always correct, you know? And in comes the aha moments from that. Yeah.
I love the what you've just said, like the cold. People are afraid of the cold, but what is the cold?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the cold? What does it translate? Like, what is in people's minds? What does the cold translate into?
I do really think that it is just fear, you know, and it is the mind. It's being identified with the thought of fear when it comes down to it. You know, I suppose in saying that it could be pain as well, right? But yeah, when you scrape to the bottom, it's fear. And most people, it's where the stress comes in. Stress is fear, and it always seems to be like fear of dying.
Yeah.
Right? And when we get to the bottom, all fear is fear of death.
I've definitely looked into a bit of that, and I'm so stoked that you landed on that, because it's it might be very, very far-fetched to think, but there's been a lot of research that's been done to suggest that no matter what fear that we do have, it all does eventually stem back to the fear of death. And so, like, let's push on this a bit more.
Yeah, I love this subject.
Like, what is death? You know, if we're so fearful of the cold, and that comes from our fear of death, and you know, like this, and I'm quoting this from someone else, but like, if we look at fear as an acronym of false evidence appearing real, and we've got this situation of the cold, which we are fearing, and then death, like, if we work back, like, what is death? You know, what are we scared of there?
Yeah, well, I know for me personally, it changed my perception of death, because I am going into my fear every single day. I stopped fearing heights. I stopped feeling spiders and snakes because I was going into the river and conquering my fear. And for me personally, my journey the last few years, I feel like death is transformation, you know, into something else, and it shouldn't be feared, because we're not living life when we are constantly thinking that way. And when we look at it from more of, a sickness or a health point of view, fear is, or, a lot of people call it stress, is detrimental chronically to our nervous system and our state. Being in fight, flight, and being chronically anxious, right? It's causing, we know, oxygen deprivation in our cells because we're hyperventilating. Our breath is up here in our chest, and we know it's the root cause of chronic lifestyle-related diseases.
Yeah, well, now you bring it back to the reality that the world that we're in for a lot of people, and that situation where there are a number of diseases that exist in this world, and translating that into dis-ease, like a dis-ease within our system as a person, as a being. And yeah, it sounds like you've got a tool to use which breaks down that individual dis-ease that we have within our own bodies and our own minds, and allows us to come back to a more unfiltered state of being, and a much quieter place, void of all the noise that's going on.
Yeah, and and that's where the breath work comes in as well, right? Because the Wim Hof breathing is that controlled hyperventilation, but it's for a short-term period. So it's a hormetic stress, hormesis. You might have heard of acute or eustress. But then Wim's added the breath hold, which is absolutely genius, right? Which is the calm down, the parasympathetic. It's where oxygen, so oxygen binds to our red blood cells, the hemoglobin, and the breath hold allows it to release down into our tissues and our cells, where we use it for building blocks and breaking down food. And going back to hyperventilation, which is stress, right, which is this fear, this short-term, this short breath up here in the dead space. It's not, people aren't understanding that they need tools to calm down, right, to relax, for the oxygen to get down into the cells. So, again, genius for Wim to come up with this breathing technique, and also in the ice water, because yes, it takes our breath away, right, which is, what is that? It's fight, flight. Again, it's the sympathetic nervous system, but then we use our breath and we calm down into parasympathetic. So chronic disease, and I get a lot of people at my workshops who suffer from autoimmune diseases. And the one thing that they say to me is, I don't know how to calm down. I need to find tools to calm down. So it's fascinating, it's, and we're very lucky to have these tools to use for that reason.
Yeah, it's all within us already. We don't have to go out there and buy anything. We don't have to go out there and, buy a piece of equipment. It's something we do every day, but now we're taking it, which is the breath, and we're applying this technique that you've spoken to, which I find is so funny, isn't it? This free medicine, which evidently is very, very powerful from what you've seen.
It costs nothing. It just, it's free. Make time for it. I tell people, focus on the inside, because the outside it'll flow. The outside environment, it really will. And that's your life, your relationships, the people, what you do. It sorts itself out.
How does nature and nature therapy and being in nature fall into your work as well? Because, from what I understand, it's one of the main pillars that you you have in the work that you do. So there's the breath work, there's the cold exposure, and then there's doing all of this like very close to, if not within nature. So like what does nature play? Like what role does nature play in the work that you've done? And what do you see it is so important about it?
Yeah. I absolutely love getting my bare feet on the ground, walking through the dirt, walking through the trees, having the breeze on me. It's affecting all of my senses, my emotions. There's, and I'm out there by myself as well a lot of the times. And it's so calming, can I get that, in our homes, in our caves, in a chest freezer, or I know that they have to be used sometimes, but I want to swim in the river. I want to feel the flow of the creek on me, stepping on the rocks and the moss. And I know, we're animals. We belong outside. It's a natural immunity. We know that it remodulates our immune system. Just spending time out there, the biodiversity, everything is it's so important. And you only have to go out there in it for 10 minutes. Hike a mountain. You're like, oh, I know I belong out here. It's a deep sense, a knowing.
I love that, the way you phrased it, a knowing. It comes from a more of a visceral part of our being, and it's not something we can logically understand with our mind. It's this, like, oh yeah, I can relate, I can correlate these things you speak about to being beneficial for me as a human, because we once may have been like apes and animals. But it's not until you go out there and you start to feel all of these elements on your skin, and then it's quite often afterwards where you're like, oh, now I know what you're talking about, Leah. I get you. You are a wizard.
Yeah, and the more time you spend out there, I think the more you realise that it's where we belong, And I'm blessed with my my life. I get to travel, like I said, the world and Australia, and I spend time in the cities. But for me, and I don't mind spending a few days and whatnot, but it's not home. It's. I feel it when I go in there, the energy is different. It's constant. It's go, go, go. It's not stopping, whereas I enjoy my peace and my calm time, and it's where I find it,
What advice do you have for people that are really curious about this? Where would you send them? What do you recommend they do to get the first interaction with this?
Sure. So if they haven't heard of the Wim Hof Method, they can go to thewimhofmethod.com. It's an incredible platform. There's a really good guided breathing technique that Wim has put up, and he guides participants. You simply got to press play on the phone and you can get into it. There's the cold shower challenge and how to take a cold shower. All of the science is there. If you're interested in a workshop or a retreat with myself, I'm on, I've got my socials. My website is leahscott.net. Instagram is @LeahScotty, and Facebook is Wim Hof Method Techniques. And I put all of my events up online, and I'm very excited, for next year and bringing more retreats to the country.
Well, I think I can't wait to get back on a retreat with yourself and whoever is party to it. I think what you've been able to share with us today is something that I've been lucky enough to know for a while, but I'm continually impressed by the work that you have done as a person and what we've got ahead of you as well. I think it's been so incredible seeing your growth as well over the last few years in this space. I remember the first time I met you down in Melbourne, we did just a one-day workshop, and you're like sitting quietly at the front of the workshop, not saying a whole lot, just kind of helping out with people getting in the ice bath, just very, very quiet. And now you've just like grown into your own space. You've created your own, just your own space to be, and just really put out some incredible, just incredible energy and guidance into this world. So, that's my thank you to you.
Oh, thank you, Mael. I have this real fight in me, that I'm not going to give up. It has completely transformed my life in, like I said, so many different ways. And if people choose to want to give it a go and help themselves, then I'm here to pass it on, because I agree with Wim, and we don't need to be suffering the way that we are. We've all got the potential to be happy, healthy and strong and get back to our roots, of peace, love and kindness and freedom.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more thing. You're a mother of two young boys, and you have expressed a number of times your thoughts around doing this for younger people and the youth of today. What drives you to want to do that, and what's the next steps in bringing this to the younger generation as well?
Yeah, I have seen, having boys myself, like you said, and being a part of the school system, occasionally seeing things on the news and whatnot of how much the youth are suffering. So their mental health, I think it's something around the 70% are anxious and depressed, with nearly 40% on pharmaceuticals. So that is a big driver on passing these skills on, right, for them to start taking control of their mind and body. And there are just, all of the benefits that I've talked about over the last hour, but being able to, they're coming into adulthood, and look at a lot of the youth of the day, especially in the 20s, as the drugs and the alcohol, and they're used as vices, right, to de-stress out of boredom. There's all types of reasons, right? Whereas if I can educate them in breath work and swimming in rivers and spending time in nature, the breath work itself, we get high, it's euphoric, and I'd love to see them having Saturday night breathing sessions with their mates, Sunday afternoon ice parties, right? And just perhaps, becoming more conscious and awakening to the fact that there is so much more out there than they've been educated in society and school and whatnot, and creating mindset and just having these tools under their belts that they just might use every now and again, especially going into, university or high school. Focus is so important, calming the mind or creating stillness and whatnot. So that really, all those things drive me. keep driving me in the hope of getting this out to the younger generation in the years to come.
What a mission. Love it.
I'm not stopping.
Yeah, good. Don't. I'll hold you to that. Far out.
Yeah.
I want to be throwing down breathwork sessions when I'm 80 and loving it,
Yeah.
like you said.
Oh, well, look, and there's a beauty of it. For the older generation, you don't have to walk, right? You don't need to have, well, you can be just lying in bed and just breathing and creating the blood flow. The blood flow just correlates with healing. So young and old, give it a go. Yeah,
such a good point. Hey, like as an athlete and someone who's been in that space for quite a few years now, we always use this term active recovery, which is you're moving in a much more gentler way, or low intensity way, basically just to encourage blood flow to the muscles and around your system. And really that's the main focus. It's not to be impactful and a real stress, like a real high stress on your body. It's meant to be a real low stress activity, and it aids healing. You feel better after the session than when you started, because of the blood flow and pumping that through your muscles and helping them repair. So yeah, there you go, right? Like breath work is like active recovery. Get amongst it.
It opens and closes our cardiovascular system. The veins, arteries and vessels. We've got 100,000 kilometers of these things all through our bodies, our capillaries, and they open and close, and we flow blood. It's phenomenal. Anyone can do it.
I hope everyone gives it a shot. I hope this inspires it or just encourages a few people to give it a try, because that's it too, right? Like trying it is you've got to at least try it. And if it ain't good for you, then I don't believe you. Try it again, but at least try it.
Yeah. And, I say to people, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for somebody else in your life. Do you have kids? And do it for them. Do it for the rest of the world, because when we start to heal ourselves internally, then the small world around us heals too.
Oh, that's such a good point.
It flows like that. But I have to say also, the safety is don't do the breath work in the ice water. So that's very important for people to know if they're going to give this a go. It is separate. Okay, don't do it while riding a bike or driving a car. You can pass out, be in a safe environment.
We should have really put that at the start of the podcast. Very true. Yeah. It's very true. And I think that's one of the great benefits of doing a workshop, be it a day, be it a weekend. You learn so much, and you really learn through doing. And that's the biggest thing. It's like you don't know what you don't know, and doing it just opens up so many more lessons to be taken on board. So yeah.
Follow your curiosity.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's a great adventure to go on. Leah, thanks so much for your time. I look forward to catching up with you again. And I really, really do hope that this whole journey just keeps on flowing on, and then hitting road bumps and you just like coasting over them.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for having me and allowing me to get my passion out there.
So there we go, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today and listening to my conversation with Leah. I really hope that sparks a little bit of curiosity in your mind and in your body, and that really, really ignites that little bit of knowing that allows you to get into some more cold water, some breath work, and also out into nature. So, as Leah mentioned, you can check her out on leahscott.net or go hit her up on Instagram at Leah Scotty. So, I really, really look forward to hearing about your journey into the cold, into the breathwork, and into nature. Please let us know what you think, and thank you a lot for taking the time to join us here today on Stokely. Keep well, and we'll see you next time.